As we look forward to the future of James Gunn's DCEU, there is a question that, while some may think is pretty simple to answer, it's one that could have huge ramifications on the success of the newly established DC film universe. For the last 10 years, from Man of Steel to Flash, there has been one constant in regards to the DCEU: underachieving. While many, including myself, believe what Nolan, Goyer, and Snyder created with Man of Steel is a masterpiece, there was an overwhelming sense of disappointment from a larger audience. And this continued to carry on through the first few films within the DCEU, and begun to split the fan base. A rushed and haphazardly put together universe was pieced in some sort of fashion in hopes of capturing some glitz, glory, and money that Marvel was experiencing. The problem was, well, actually, what was the problem? So that's the question. What went wrong with the DCEU? From different visions, audience reception, ballooning budgets, and even family tragedy. What is the one moment we can sit back and say, this was the defining moment on why the DCEU failed? Many people want to talk about the behind-the-scenes shenanigans from Jeff Johns and John Berg trying to muscle control away from Zack Snyder. Some will even say that it was Joss Whedon's rewrites and changes to 2017's Justice League, while others will say it was the desire to make like Marvel films that caused the death of the universe. Honestly though, none of those are bad guesses. How can a franchise succeed when there is no direction? There's even been the rumor or two that the behind-the-scenes antics from Jeff Johns was so bad that he leaked Zack Snyder's original outline to Marvel's boss, Kevin Feige, to which he then included many of those story beats into the MCU through a handful of different films. Regardless of what happened though, and it was all pretty bad from the sounds of it, I still can't say the defining moment was how Johns and Berg acted behind the scenes. I mean, let's not look past the fact that the head of WB at the time, Kevin Tushihara, hired them in those roles that would have them oversee DC films. It was technically theirs to maneuver and guide. But what about Batman vs. Superman: Dawn of Justice? A movie that not only touted the two biggest superheroes in comic book history, but would also be the introduction to the first ever film version of Wonder Woman. See, people fail to realize that a movie that big has high, not regular, but high expectations. Whether right or wrong, this movie was a $1 billion guarantee until it wasn't. But what happened? The audience, who was already hesitant to go see this film, turned out to be right. The darker tone of the movie was not what they wanted to see. Superman died already, and there was little to be hopeful for coming out of the theater. Because of this, Warner Brothers panicked, and they and Zack Snyder promised 2017's Justice League would rectify all of that, which was already in production when BVS released. But even after a solid pundit visit and a damn good trailer, the fans still weren't biting at that point. Tragedy then struck the Snyder's family when their young daughter Autumn took her own life. This gave Johns and Berg the opportunity to make the drastic changes they believed needed made, thus bringing in Joss Whedon to rewrite and reshoot a large portion of 2017's Justice League. At this point, that ended Zack's tenure as a DC director. During all this turmoil, plans were made for upcoming films that we never saw. Movies like Suicide Squad, which was written and shot in like 6 months, Wonder Woman and Aquaman were fast-tracked, and while some were better than others, there was still no real direction on the grander DCEU. The amount of DC financial flops is absolutely astounding. You have Black Adam, Birds of Prey, Shazam 2, The Flash, The Suicide Squad, and Wonder Woman 1984. So I ask, what is the defining moment that killed the DCEU? Was it the release of Justice League in 2017? That would be a quick and easy assessment if it were true. But it truly comes down to this. One man being hired to continue after a very, very disappointing outing in his first stint in the universe. And look, I am a huge fan of what he did. But the hiring of Zack Snyder to continue the story after Man of Steel was not the right financial move. Especially when Man of Steel was such a divisive film, but wanted bright, hope, happiness, and a wholesome story. We haven't seen that from a Superman movie since 2005's Superman Returns. James Gunn's DCU looks to change that though. Superman will be the defining moment for the newly established universe, as it should be.